be kind, and subscribe.
Welcome, everyone, to the United Nations of Horror. This is Jason, and today I am joined by the host with the most, the master of horror himself, Mark Kane. Mark, how are you today?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm not sure I am a master of horror. I'm a master of horror as long as it's before 1990, say. But after that, I'm a little vague. Yeah, I kind of know my stuff.
Yeah, man.
When it's older films.
I always think I know my horror pretty good, and then we start talking, and I'm like, man. I often tell people, just friends locally and stuff. I'm like, yeah, my buddy Mark, he is like an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to film, and
that's very kind of you.
Yeah, man, don't sell yourself short. You have an amazing knowledge, and today we are talking about a really good remake from 2004, actually, and that is Dawn of the Dead.
Hey, Vivian.
Anna, look, I can go backwards.
Let me see. Hey, that's amazing. Hey.
Hey, you. Vivian? Honey, are you okay?
Officials have declared a state of emergency.
Everybody they kill gets up and kills.
Residents are advised to find a safe place and stay there.
I've just been informed that we are going off the air and switching to the emergency broadcasting system.
Look up the road, there's a lot more of them. Why are they coming here?
Maybe they're coming for us.
Sooner or later, they're gonna get in here.
Our baby's gonna be fine.
It's only a matter of time.
It's coming.
They'll find a way in.
Oh, God.
Mark, when did you first come to this?
I think I watched it very close to when it was released, and I found it quite an impressive film. I was really taken aback with how good it was. I thought it was better than the other one it's often compared to, which is 28 Days Later. I personally preferred this to 28 Days Later, because they both introduced the fast zombies idea, didn't they?
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Though if you do watch older zombie films, you can see fast zombies, even in Night of the Living Dead.
It's true.
But it's more occasional. I think the Dawn of the Dead, these zombies are aggressively fast and scary for a different reason than the usual shuffling ones are. So I quite liked it. I like this new mode of zombie film. You can mix and match now when you make a zombie film. You can have fast, you can have slow. And
Absolutely.
so on. But the slow ones tend to build the tension, whereas the fast ones are just scary, proper scary to whoever's involved. So yeah, interesting one. An interesting comparison with the original film. I have to say the 78 Dawn of the Dead is in my opinion, one of the best zombie films of all time. Actually.
Yeah, we can't talk about this one without talking about the 1978 film. Because
I
agree with you. I think it is like a must-watch for any horror fan, the original Dawn of the Dead.
Massively, and this one is massively influential on the zombie video game arena too.
Yes.
Pretty much any zombie game you play these days are quite like the zombies in this version of Dawn of the Dead. Some of them are from more the original. You get two flavours of zombies in zombie games, and you could say they're the Dawn of the Dead 1 or the Dawn of the Dead remake versions, right?
Absolutely.
So
I mean, Dead Rising is essentially Dawn of the Dead. I mean, it takes place in a mall.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that game even today, and it was directly inspired by Dawn of the Dead, and Resident Evil was inspired by Night of the Living Dead. I mean, I think I mentioned this on the last show, Mark. When I played Resident Evil, I had no clue it was pretty much just based straight up on Romero's Night of the Living Dead. But I mean, the house, of course, it's a mansion, I guess, in Resident Evil. So there are differences, but it's very much inspired by that idea. And same with Dead Rising here.
Yeah, and indeed, zombies have reached board gaming. There's some really good zombie board games. There's one in particular I like called Zombicide. I used to paint a lot of the models. And they recently brought out a Night of the Living Dead version, and I've got it, and it's good. Apart from one particular, you can play like 12, 13 different variants, right? And they reflect scenes from the movie. There's one which sucks, which is running through long grass. It's a really sucky game. But the rest of the games are really good. You're defending a house, you're boarding it up, there's a dead woman on the stairs, you got to get rid of that. It's really like the film. And they did a great job of porting the bigger game. Zombicide is quite a big and intricate game. It takes a lot of setting up and putting away. But the Night of the Living Dead one is a much stripped down version and a lot more fun because you can set it up quick and you put it away quick and you can basically play the characters from the movie. Barbara's there and so on, so it's very cool. So zombies are everywhere, right? That's what we're saying.
I think the zombie craze has maybe died down a little bit currently, but I mean, if we go back to
not in video gaming,
2004,
not at all.
Oh no,
but
I
films,
agree.
yes, yeah.
In video games, yeah, it's still going, and I mean, Dead Island, all that stuff.
Modern Warfare Zombies, MWZ is
yes,
and also before that DMZ.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, there's no shortage of good zombie games, and zombies make great cannon fodder, right?
Yeah, they're fun to sort of play against, and it's interesting to watch. Dawn of the Dead, I give it. I mean, it opens great, and then it's got them fast zombies, and that's really where. And honestly, Zack Snyder really knocked this one out of the park. It's his first movie; he knocks it out of the park. He had a really good run. He followed this up with 300 and Watchmen, awesome films. But then it kind of went off the rails a bit when he started getting into DC and slightly other films. Though, you know what? His most recent cut came out of nowhere. His most recent cut of Justice League is a really great film. The original Justice League cut was not very good. And in fact, the other Zack Snyder DC movies are not very good. But Justice League is excellent.
Yeah, his cut was so much better.
Yeah, but then in the same year, he released Army of the Dead, which is kind of a sequel to this. I think I'm not really sure if it's the same universe or not, and that wasn't very good either.
I didn't care for it. It's very forgettable.
No, well, I thought it was good until they got to Las Vegas, and then it got silly because the zombies had a society. It's what?
That's my thing.
Nonsense.
Yeah,
and it didn't work, and it wasn't scary, and it kind of got uninteresting.
So some people call it a spiritual successor. So I don't know that I would go that far, but it's there.
And I haven't seen his Rebel Moon yet, so I don't know what it's like. But some people say it's alright, some don't. I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to really sort of judge. and I'll give it a go some point.
Oh yeah,
but I have to say, the more I think about his cut of Justice League, it's so good. It's really weird how such a similar two cuts of a film, which contain a lot of the same scenes, can be so differently, in the quality and how you feel about it. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't know why. I can't remember the reason the studio chose to like recut it, but I mean, I went to the theater to see that film, and I just thought, man, that wasn't that great. And then, like you say, the Snyder cut comes out on, what was it, HBO Max, and it was much better
because it took its time, and you understood the
exactly.
characters so much better. And Cyborg was so. Anyway, we kind of get going into that.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder's got an interesting career. I feel almost when he's reined in by writers, he does better.
Yeah, and we should mention that James Gunn did the screenplay for this, speaking of which.
Yes, excellent screenplay, right? Excellent screenplay.
Yeah,
characters,
very good.
Interesting, funny. There's even some of the secondary characters get quite distinct character arcs, which is great. They're not just idiots and stay idiots. But I have to props for Ty Burrell's character. He's such a douchebag in this. He's hilarious, and he stays a douchebag all the way through. That is funny, but it's funny, so that's fine.
It is. I mean, man, you're waiting for him to bite the bullet, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's just full of snidey remarks all the way through, and it's hilarious. A great opening scene. Let's get into the movie.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Of course, it's going to be spoilers, but this is 20 years old now, unbelievably.
That hurts. That hurts me, Mark.
Yeah,
because I remember I didn't see this in the theater, but I did see it on DVD when it came out. When it first came out, and so that really, oh man, that's dating myself a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great opening. I like our main protagonist here is Sarah Polley.
Yeah.
Plays Anna Clark.
Yeah, she's good. She delivers because she's usually comedic or light romantic stuff, but she does well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really familiar with her other work besides this, but I really did enjoy her in this. I thought she was a great lead, and that opening is so good. She's a nurse, working in a hospital, and comes home to her husband, and then they take a shower and go to sleep, just like a normal couple.
They miss the news entirely.
They do. They totally miss the zombie report.
Yeah. They get caught up in a date night. And also when she comes home, she talks to a little girl, next door neighbour, Vivian, and sort of they have a bit, they have some nice words to each other. But it starts with Vivian as a zombie intruding. And immediately biting her husband, who immediately becomes a zombie. She is so lucky to get out of that. It felt like she was in super peril, didn't it?
It is a tense scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene. Really good. Driving around that neighbourhood and the zombies attacking people, and she doesn't know what's going on, but she makes a terrible mistake of crashing her car in the middle of all this, but such is life. But luckily, she gets found by Ving Rhames' character. We should mention we're going to get into spoilers, but this is an old film.
Yeah. So definitely spoiler warning here for anyone who has not seen this film. And I mean, I think our audience already knows. Like, we pretty much both recommend this, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
This is I recommend. It's a great remake from an era of great remakes, and we'll talk about remakes in the second half of this
podcast.
I think it's worth talking about horror remakes because there's so many ones to recommend or suggest avoiding, and I actually started writing a list. And I think I've got at least 25 on my list, and I just stopped at that point because I'm getting into the more obscure ones now, so I just stopped. But yeah, some really good ones, and a lot made around this time. A lot were made in the 80s, and a lot were made around this time, and then more recently, there's quite a lot of remakes that are quite good. There's so it's horror lends itself to remakes, sometimes because the horror is suits being generational. An example of that is It, right? Or Carrie.
Oh, yes.
Right? Now, all right, the Carrie remakes haven't been very good, but I think that story lends itself to you know, what's bullying in this age compared to bullying in the 70s or the 90s?
Right.
You know what I mean? It kind of
Yeah.
lends, and it's the same. It's the same. What's childhood memory? What's your childhood? Like in the 80s or the 50s, or if they make it again sometime, it might be what's your childhood like in the 2020s. Some stories lend themselves to that kind of thing.
Yeah, the subject matter is there, and it's always going to be there. So.
Yeah. And you know what? There wasn't that many remakes. There was a few in the 80s. Then the whole thing kind of died off. And I think possibly this film reignited it. Possibly. Or it's part of that sort of early vanguard of remakes that suddenly sort of said, oh, there's money in this.
I kind of wonder, looking back, I'm trying to think, is this sort of what ignited just the zombie craze, do you think?
The more recent? Possibly. Shaun of the Dead was up there with that.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
That was big everywhere,
yeah,
worldwide.
Because it was so popular and really entertaining. But, I think zombie films are really easy to make. Relatively compared to other films, which means, unfortunately, as a genre, it has a very high hit-miss ratio. There's a lot of misses in the zombie genre, but there's some really great films, and this is one of the high points we're going to be talking about.
The Walking Dead came in 2010. I had to look that up.
It could be
so
the success of this would have spurred The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
indeed.
absolutely.
The Walking Dead was very successful, but unfortunately, because of the nature of the stories, it kind of... I don't think people got fed up with zombies. I think they got the lazy writing. Well, the character...
Yeah.
There was all sorts of problems with The Walking Dead, the characterizations and things like that. Though I did watch every single episode. It was a slog at the end. But the thing is, even in the final seasons, there was some episodes that were terrific, But there was just so many bad... There was... characters did bad things for driving the plot, not because it suited their characters. So characters were constantly changing. It was just a mess. And annoying.
That's kind of why I stopped watching, because, as you say, just like it was all over the place. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Particularly when they killed a certain character off that I cared about, which, I mean, and it wasn't the fact that they killed him off, because, in a zombie movie or a film, people are going to die, people you like.
Yeah.
But it was not just the way it was done either. I think it was just done because it got a reaction, and I felt like that was the wrong move. And I'm sure some people know who I'm talking about. But anyway, it's, it's... Unfortunately, it happens in television, and it is hard to do a series with that many episodes. Whereas a film like this with Dawn of the Dead, you have a good many characters, and many of them are going to be cannon fodder. But when you can still give them that personality and those backstories like this film gives, it's really a joy to watch. The whole cast is great in this.
Yeah. I mean, there's a particular standout. Ving Rhames is great. Ty Burrell's great. I quite like the bloke who played Michael, and I can't remember the actor's name, but there was a few other characters I wasn't that bothered about. But like I say, I think even some of the smaller characters had interesting character arcs. Let's get into the story a bit, and we can sort of cover that as we go. Basically, Ving Rhames' character Kenneth finds Anna, which is Sarah Pauli's character, helps her out the car, and then some other people, and they kind of meet other people who are all really scared out of their minds and defensive, but they kind of realise they've got to stick together, including like a man and his wife. He's kind of, I think, a petty criminal is what it's said in it, but that's never really other than he's got a gun, right? And
he even says at one point, like, I've done bad things in my life, but they never really say what he's done, which kind of keeps him interesting. I kind of like that they did that, Yeah,
it does. Anyway, they go to a mall, which has got a few zombies around, and they kind of get attacked by a zombified guard who falls into a fountain and just wriggles around in it for ages until they sort of... right, he does. But unfortunately, he scratches the pregnant woman. But, that then gets forgotten about for a bit. But there's three guards who really say, be on your way, this is our mall kind of thing. Go somewhere, it's not a problem. But in the end... They take
CJ,
them in.
right?
They have to give up their weapons to go in, and then basically they treat them as prisoners, which is really odd. Well, they don't at first. They take them in, but slowly they become more bossy, basically, and tyrannical because they got the guns and no one else has. And they also spot there's a guy across the way who runs a gun shop called Andy, who is isolated, who turns out to be a crack shot. He's basically really good at sort of shooting zombies in the head from his high point of because his shop is quite high. You know, it's structurally it's 3 floors, so he gets on the roof and he can do stuff.
Yeah, I like how they write back and forth to each other, kind of with signs, you know, because it's too far away.
Yeah.
But he's trapped in his own gun store. Andy's gun store, I believe, is the name of it.
Yeah, Andy's gun store. And he also, when he first sees them, he starts pointing and he turns around and there's a military helicopter in the sky, which kind of ignores them.
Yeah.
Even though they've written big messages, you know, people alive kind of things. And in fact, the message they wrote kind of reminded me of when The Walking Dead starts, when he's walking through the hospital and there's a message written on like this locked door saying, "Dead, do not enter," you know. They're saying alive, we're here, or something like that.
Yeah, it was creepy, but creepy in a good way, the way they did it, you know.
Yeah.
I liked it. But I definitely got those same vibes from it. And I thought it was interesting too that Andy, you know, he has all these guns, but the poor guy has like no food. So he's slowly starving to death essentially. And we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah. CJ, the 3 guards, CJ, Bart and Terry, I think it is, kind of become very bossy and aggressive. They lock people in areas and sort of, but then one of them kind of starts to suggest something rapey. And at that point, Ving Rhames sort of doesn't put up with it anymore. They overcome them, so they become the prisoners then. Except one of them sort of betrays the others. He just won't go along with what they're suggesting. That's right, isn't it? So one of the guards is with the new guys, but the other 2 get locked up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what happens because he doesn't like the kind of rapey implications, and that's sort of when things turn and they're able to take over and get the guards, and it's like, hey, we're going to treat you guys how you treated us, essentially.
Yeah, essentially.
And it's, you know, CJ is sort of just this, it's interesting because you see his evolution, and very quickly in this movie, he sort of goes from this almost kind of redneckish guard who wants to do things his way, but then slowly he sort of does become a part of the group himself.
It's done in a really good way. They're stuck in this room and they've got nothing to do, so he starts reading these women's magazines and he starts reading articles about what makes a successful relationship, and he says the secret is trust, and he uses that back to sort of say, you need my help. This is about trust now. You know, I want a gun. And they say, no, you can't have a gun, but you can have an axe. You know, things like that. And it actually comes good. And it must be said that the rapist thing isn't him. He's the boss of the other 2, but it's one of the other ones that kind of is that. And you can see him like, not considering it, you can see him kind of not immediately shutting it down, but it's too fast anyway. As soon as that kicks off, Kenneth Ving Rhames takes over, sorts it out, and overpowers them really.
Anyway, he was my favorite character in this film.
He was good.
I think.
I was kind of interested. Kenneth, I always thought was just a British name. I didn't know. I've never heard of an We do have Kenneth here. Usually you just say Ken. You know. Kind of shorten it. I don't know why we do that over here. We always, of course, Barbie and Ken, of course, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. That's just one of the weird things we do.
Oh no,
over here.
We shorten it to Ken here as well. It's
do you? Okay. So
I can't remember any Americans called Ken in any films or any of that sort. I guess Ken Foray actually in.
There you go. Yeah.
In the original Dawn of the Dead. I should mention they get some cameos. Some of the guys from Dawn of the original get cameos. I can't remember the actor's name, but the white military guy who's with Ken Foray.
Oh,
who's the black military guy. He's a general. on the telly. We see Tom Savini as a redneck sheriff saying shoot him in the head. Or what was the redneck sheriff, I should
Which
say.
is awesome, because Tom Savini, you can instantly identify him.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
Tom Savini's great. And we also get Ken Foree on the telly as like an evangelist claiming hell is full. And when hell is full, the dead walk the earth. He's one of those guys.
I
it's
love
good
that
to see Ken
scene.
Foree. Yeah. It's
That
really
is a
good.
great scene.
So all these other people turn up, and they kind of go out and get them in, and but we see the more longer they're in the mall, the more the numbers of zombies build up until there's a massive, a thick crowd of zombies around it.
Indeed.
Not just a few here and there, but like a massive sort of Woodstock gig kind of zombies. There is, and one of their number is this sick woman who is really suffering, and she's in a wheelbarrow, and Anna, the nurse, kind of says, "This is weird. If she's got a fever, she's cool." And one of the guys says, "That's good." And he goes, "No, a fever. If you're feverish,
Right.
you're usually hot." And she becomes a zombie. So they work out that if you've been bitten, you're a zombie, right? Because
Indeed,
someone else just dies of natural causes and doesn't get zombie reanimated. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He doesn't come back.
Right.
So,
Okay. So it is about the bite,
it's-
but possibly scratches, so they don't really know.
Yeah, that's like how it's spread. Basically, is sort of the thing I get.
Yeah, and there is a father and daughter in the new people called Frank and Nicole. Frank is played by Matt Frewer, who's a great actor. Original Matt Headroom was Trash Can Man in the Stan miniseries. Was Moloch in the Watchmen movie. He's a great actor.
Oh yeah, he is great. I agree.
Yeah, and he's been bitten. He thinks he might. So they say, well, we need to isolate, and Frank's okay with that. He wants to be isolated, but he does turn and can shoot.
Yeah, that's a sad scene because of the daughter too.
Yeah.
It's pretty heart wrenching. And
who forms a relationship with the other guard, the one who elected not, who turned on the other two. She starts a relationship, which is nice.
Yeah,
sorry, I
think
cut you off.
She's kind of the youngest person in the group too.
Yeah. Well, they're both fairly young, aren't they? They're
both of them.
Yeah.
But
we also...
I was just gonna say. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on. No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna mention that it's interesting how they do create the drama so quickly, but it's done very effectively. So we do care about these characters, even though we only know them for a short time. I think it kind of, in a way, it shows the best of humanity with a lot of these people banding together, and and the fact that we as an audience have compassion for these characters. It's kind of nice to see.
Yeah, indeed. There's a couple a few of the other people that come in are Steve, who's Ty Burrell's character, and Monica, who is his other half. They just start having sex straight away, pretty much. I don't know if they were a night before, but they just get into it straight away.
Yeah, it doesn't take long, does it?
And then there's also something going on between Anna and Michael, the salesman guy, who's like the calm one of the group, right? He's the calm, measured one of the group.
He's almost like the secondary main character, I guess.
Yeah.
Although I think I thought Ving Rhames' character was just my favorite personally. I guess you could say he's also kind of the second main. But did you think this relationship between the two characters formed like too quickly? Did it feel forced to you? What do you think?
It didn't feel forced because I didn't notice it. So, sorry, it felt organic. So I thought it was fine. I understand. But also, in pressures like this, that sort of thing does happen. People bond if they, when they're scared and, isolated, that kind of can happen. So, I thought that was fine. Maybe Anna, because she was married and her husband died like a week before.
That was my only thought.
That
when
was
it
a
happened.
bit.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I was fine with it. Now, one of the power goes out, and so they need to get CJ to help them. This is where CJ and I think Bart, the other security guard, they have to let him out, and he's sort of saying, trust. And right. CJ does indeed step up, and and so he stops being a prisoner. Right after this, he kind of helps, and they find a dog, don't they? Called Chips.
Yeah, I
but
love
then,
the dog. Of course, I'm a dog person, as you know.
Yeah.
So
and zombies somehow got into the basement and start attacking. They catch Bart, don't they? Badly, and he starts getting eaten pretty much.
yeah,
But one of them, I can't remember which one, finds a petrol pump and sprays gasoline on them and sets them alight, so all the zombies burn, which is kind of a nod towards the Night of the Living Dead, actually.
It is. Yeah,
petrol pump stuff. Yeah,
that scene you can never forget it in the original film. So yeah. I was thinking the same thing. But yeah, it's just we should mention the gore too. They don't hold back in this film.
No. I mean, we're a bit immune. If you've watched The Walking Dead, you're kind of immune. But this is full on. If someone's not used to horror, this would be quite strong stuff for them.
I remember when I first saw this, it did leave a big impression on me. Of course, I was a lot younger back then, and I had seen. Obviously, I played zombie video games, and I had seen some zombie films. But man, this one I think is probably the goriest film I had maybe seen at that time. This is me fresh out of high school, so a long time ago. But it left its impression there, and I'm glad they didn't hold back. It still looks good today. I felt like it's not a lot of CG, a lot of practical.
It's great. It's really good. This is what World War Z could have been if they'd have not gone so CG heavy. Or indeed something like I Am Legend. It could have been much more like this. In the meantime, Andre's keeping his wife isolated because she's heavily pregnant, and people were starting to get a bit, why is he doing that? And it turns out she is ill, and she turns into a zombie. And then it turns out the baby is also a zombie, but there's also, he can't deal with it. And when an older woman, the one who was like in with the influx, I think she was the truck driver, in fact.
She was the truck driver,
She happens to have a gun. Everyone's got a gun. And he kind of says,
This is
"Were you
America.
threatening
They
my
all do."
family?" Because she's saying she's going to turn. She's turning. And he shoots her. She shoots him, so they all die. And
That's
meanwhile,
a brutal
this
scene.
zombie woman is giving birth to a baby that is also a zombie, and it's not on camera, but they killed the zombie baby basically.
Yeah, this was pretty controversial at the time. I remember.
It's all off camera, but I mean, there is a zombie baby in one of Peter Jackson's movies. I think Dead Alive or Twins Where You Are. It's called different names. But that's for comedy, right? That's a comedy zombie movie kind.
Yeah, and I think at the time, not many people had seen that except for maybe hardcore horror fans, but particularly here in the States, even now that film is kind of hard to find.
It's a great film. It's really
it is
fun.
a great film.
It's called Brain Dead as well, I think, in non-American territories. I'm not sure about the naming because there is another American horror film called Dead Alive. So it might be. There's some. I can't remember the details, but it is a Peter Jackson film. I think
saw it
his
under
second feature. Yeah,
I saw it under the Dead or Alive name. Or Dead Alive?
Okay.
Is that it?
Dead Alive,
yeah, that's the version I saw. And that was ages ago. It was on like one of the movie channels that we had back when cable was a thing.
Yeah. So the characters are developing. CJ particular is developed into a sort of much more likable character.
He has that redemption arc, doesn't he?
So he's part of the team now, and they're all together. And there's no particularly inner team tensions, is there anymore? Because they're all kind of working together. Apart from Ty Burrell's character Steve, who's just a douchebag to everyone all the time. He's kind
and
of
also
funny.
he's also the rich guy,
And he's the rich guy. Yeah.
You would hate, he's like, I have he just says, I've got a yacht,
and then they realise his yacht which is on Lake Michigan, they can get on it and go to an island, and it'd probably be safer, is the thinking. So they start making plans, and he's not doing any work towards it. And they're saying, "You could help us," and he's like, "The captain does not work with the crew." Alongside the crew. Basically, they build up two battle buses, don't they? Like Mad Max style.
Mad Max is what I thought of too. That scene is quite reminiscent of a Mad Max film.
Yeah,
I like the way they did that.
in addition to preparing that, but Andy is starving. He's run out of food. So Ving Rhames figures out. Well, they trying to figure out how to do it, and Ty Burrell's like, why don't we draw lots and the winner can run across the space with a ham sandwich? How about that? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's thousands of zombies in this place, by the way.
Yeah, they're everywhere at this point. I mean,
Ving
it's like
Rhames
they're just waiting to
realised,
get in.
yeah, because the dog's been alright. The zombies don't attack dogs, so basically they strap food to the dog and lower it. Much to the chagrin of the daughter, whose name is I can't remember. Her. Anyway, she's very upset because she's really attached to Chips, the one whose father died. But they put down the dog, and it does get into Andy's. But unfortunately, the little space it gets through, the zombies start crawling after it, and they're kind of trying to get Andy on the radio. But then we see Andy on the roof of Ving Rhames. Oh, I should have mentioned, Ving Rhames and Andy have been passing messages across the roof the whole film. Playing chess.
Right.
Playing a game.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
They played a game where they basically give him a character name and then he pops the head of it. So they're sort of saying, Burt Reynolds. So there's a zombie who looks a bit like Burt Reynolds. And so on, right?
I love that part. Yeah, they're just
saying, he's a hell of a shot. And they actually say, when he's starving, we need him. He's a hell of a shot. And, you know... anyway, so they see him on the roof thinking he survived, but when he holds up his noseboard, it's just got blood on it. It's just habit. He's a zombie.
Really sad.
And meanwhile, the girl they think might still be alive, so they all decide to go rescue her. And old Ty Burrell's going, no. She's probably. I'm not going to get your girlfriend. She's probably dead anyway.
Yeah, because she steals one of the buses, right, to get there, or is it? Yeah. No, it's the truck she steals.
She steals the truck, so they go over and rescue her. Somehow she survived through all this. They do. Nicole is her name. They manage to get her, but they also grab a load of ammo too, useful. But one of the guys doesn't make it. Right?
Don't they go through the sewers to get her ultimately?
Yes, they do. They do. But one of the guys gets called, doesn't he, by zombies? And CJ actually shoots him as a mercy killing, right?
Yeah, I like how he's trying to drag him out. I mean, he does everything he can here, but then he's just like, okay.
Yeah,
like,
CJ's a stand-up guy, yeah.
Yeah, he really is. As much as we think he's kind of a douchebag at the beginning, he really starts to come around here. Again, with that redemptive kind of arc that we don't expect. And I really like that. I love the evolution of his character. And a lot of times people sometimes they act like douchebags when it's a bad situation, you know?
Yeah. When they're frightened,
and they're in the worst situation.
Or don't know how to deal with it. It's sometimes...
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What was I going to say? They're basically, the zombies are coming through the sewers after them, so they can't stay there anymore, so they have to just get on with the bus plan, right?
I thought that was cool how it really
Mad Maxy kind of feeling.
It's very Mad Maxy. It really goes for it at that end. Like the last 20 minutes are just crazy. Just them trying to get out with the bus, and they have the little slits through the bus where they can try to use chainsaws, and they're shooting at the zombies, and it's great. It's mayhem, absolute mayhem.
Yeah, it's really exciting, but it's chaotic. One guy actually trips over with a chainsaw and saws into Monica.
I forgot about that.
Ty Burrell, the bus crashes. They lose at least half of them, right?
Yeah, at that point, so many people die, which is really sad because it's like they almost made it,
Yeah. It's quite something. So you're feeling, oh my god, they're just getting less and less and less,
Yeah.
But they do manage to get to the boat, don't they? But CJ is caught up, and he basically lets the zombies surround him and shoots a gas canister or shoots a hole in it and throws a lighter on it, which or something like that. It kind of reflects the earlier scene with the diesel, the gasoline. So CG gets blown up, but also Michael gets bitten, so he stays behind.
Yeah, that's really sad. I like the fact that he. We didn't talk about his character too much, but he is the guy who, he works at Best Buy selling TV, he says. And, it turns out he's had all these different jobs. He's, worked on copy machines. And He's just a guy who has sort of been trying to live life, but has had bad luck. They mention, or I think he mentions actually, that he was not a very good husband, so he's divorced. But he says he was a great father. We don't know what happens to his kids, I don't think, but he does mention his kid, and
Yeah.
he's also a stand-up guy. Like he seems like a guy who would maybe be like a manager type, and easy to like. I thought his character was well done, so I was sad when
Yeah.
he was bitten.
Yeah, it was a shame. But then they get onto the yacht and they're going towards the island, but they find an old video camera and it's got some footage of Steve, with women and things like that. But there's also intercut, and we basically see a montage of some of the clips of how they're getting to the island and what happens. You think
I love this,
and also some of Steve, and it's kind of not entirely clear, but the implication is when they get there, it's also full of zombies and they get caught. That's the implication, but it's not.
Indeed.
100% clear. It's just that you see a body on the floor that may be Ving Rhames or it may not be. Things
it's
like
implied,
that.
kind of.
Yeah. So cool film. A solid 2 hours, right? Solid 2 hours.
It's absolutely solid. I love how they do kind of cut these scenes in too with the credits when they're on the island. Like the way they do that is just so cool. It's masterfully done. You don't see credits like that too often.
Yeah, I really liked it. And, having said that, Zack Snyder's great at doing the end or beginning credits. His beginning credits of The Watchmen, say, are absolutely amazing.
Yes.
For example. And he's kind of doing the same here. I really, really like this film from beginning to end. I don't think
I do too.
It's not baggy in any way. It's tense, it's exciting, it's funny. James Gunn did a great script, and Zack Snyder really brought it to life really, really well. Very vivid colours, has to be said. Kind of looks like digital. You can kind of tell it's digitally shot. But I'm not sure if some of it was intentional, because if you look at his next film, 300, that's definitely intentionally kind of not realistic looking film, is it? It's kind of
that's true,
hyper reality, or it's cartoon book kind of like.
Yeah.
This was James Gunn's second film he wrote after Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo was his first, which is a good film.
I like the original Scooby-Doo film actually.
That's
a fun one.
So I really like this. Apparently they were inspired by several remakes from the 70s and 80s, I've kind of alluded to. In particular, The Thing, The Fly, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which are
all
great
amazing
remakes.
Great
remakes. Probably
absolutely.
The top of the tree, in fact, still. So that
I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I can watch those anytime, and like I just never get tired of those films, And I think I'm going to add this to the list of films you can just kind of watch anytime, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it had been 20 years since I had seen this, but I enjoyed it just as much as the first time. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I enjoyed this film as much as the first time. Yeah, it's a great film. I'm glad we picked this. I was actually really when we just, I don't know how we got to it. We were trying to decide what to do next, and suddenly it's like, Dawn of the Dead? And I was really enthused and looking forward to seeing it, and I was not let down. It lives up to it, and it's a really, really solid zombie film. It gets a bit forgotten by the Holy Trinity of George Romero and things like Shaun of the Dead. But it's really up there. It's really up there. It's a really solid, excellent zombie film. Exciting, funny, action-packed, good characters, well-directed. There's not really much you can say. It's just a really well-put-together film.
Absolutely.
Good cinema.
Good cinema. Yes, good cinema. Well said, Mark. Before we get into just talking about a few other remakes here, what was I going to allude to? My goodness, I'm blanking today. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Take a 10-second pause because it'll make your edit easier.
Yeah, it sounds like a good plan.
All right.
So, Mark, before we move into talking about some of the other films from the some other great remakes, I should say, let me ask you. Oh God, I'm blanking again.
Leave a gap.
Oh goodness. Mark, before we get into some of the other remakes, what would you score Dawn of the Dead remake out of 5?
I'd give it a 4.5. I'd say it's really close to being a 5. It's not quite there, but it's really good. Really good.
Yeah, that's a great score. I, believe it or not, I'm going to give it a 5. I think it's
That's
that
fine.
good.
I've got no objections to that.
Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. And it surprised me because I had honestly kind of forgotten this film, which I almost feel bad about because it's so good. But, I watched it so long ago, and I was, we all change as we get older, right? So when I saw this, I was a very different person, and I really hadn't seen too much horror. And I appreciate it a lot more now than I think I did back then. Back then, it was just like, oh, this is cool, Now I'm like, okay, there was a lot of thought put into this. I think when you become sort of more of a horror movie fan, you just, there's a different way you watch film, really, compared to if you're just watching film casually, which there's nothing wrong with either way, by the way, but I enjoyed it more this way. So solid filmmaking.
Yeah, one thing I got to mention is the choice of music as well is terrific. We haven't talked about that.
Yes.
There's a Johnny Cash song. There's a great song. I think there's a few versions of it called "Down with the Sickness." There's a few versions of that song. It's terrific. Really, really like. And was it The Man? The Johnny Cash song, is it? I can't remember the title, but The Man is in the title. That was terrific. Really, really enjoyed this. I can't believe it's 20 years old. It just seems weird.
Feels like it was made yesterday to me.
Yeah,
honestly.
It still feels kind of fresh, and it's great seeing Ty Burrell in this. After seeing it, watching Modern Family, he's a nice guy, isn't he? He's a nice guy in that.
It shows how good of an actor he is, right?
Yeah. And he's not that different a performance, but he's just a totally different character.
Exactly.
So, I really enjoyed it. So I've actually started writing down a list of good or decent or notable horror remakes. And I gave up after a while because I was getting such a long list, but I can just rattle through some of these to give you some reminders.
Absolutely.
There's and I've got some bad ones. I'll start with the bad ones because we can then get to the ones. The worst ones I can think of recently were I say recently, we're talking still last 15 years. There's been a few Carrie remakes were not very good. I didn't like the most recent remake of Pet Sematary. I thought that was okay, but not great. But the real nut lows for me in this category was the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. That was just bad.
That was terrible. I saw that one too, and what a disappointment.
Yeah, I didn't like the Rob Zombie Halloweens at all.
I think I'm the only one who does.
Some people do, and there was also a really quite bad remake of The Omen that just didn't work. And I know there's a new Omen film out recently, but there is a remake of The Omen with Liv Schreiber, who I think's a great actor, but the remake just doesn't work. Right, let's get on to the good ones. Some I've already mentioned. I think the top of the tree for me is The Thing and The Fly. Those two are fantastic horror films, remakes of original films. And it was funny. I remember saying to someone who was quite young, a really good remake is The Thing. And they were like, I'm not sure it was. But they were thinking I was talking about... They weren't aware there was a 50s version of The Thing. They thought when I talked about the remake of The Thing, that I was talking about the 2010 one. With, Mario, and I was suggesting it was better than John Carpenter's thing, which I wasn't, obviously. So I explained that. But The Thing on the Fly, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is really good as well. And another few good ones from the 80s. The Blob, there was a remake of The Blob in the 80s. That was pretty damn good. With Shawnee Smith.
Enjoyed that one.
That was good.
Incredible effects for the time.
And Tobe Hooper also did a remake of Invaders from Mars, which was really good. A lot of practical stuff in that. It was really fun film. And the 50s one's kind of fun. It's very goofy, but it's fun. I really like the 80s one too. The Dawn of the Dead we've already covered. It is a recent one. That's a really good redo. It's not really a remake; it's a redo, isn't it? Really, of the
It
original
is,
story. There was a good redo of Suspiria. The original's
I have not
better,
seen that one
but
yet.
it's a pretty good remake. There was some quite interesting foreign language remakes. The Ring, not as good as the original, but The Grudge. And also Let the Right One In, the original Swedish horror film, was remade as Let Me In, and that was okay.
It's interesting that, I mean, they're so identical, those two films. That would be an interesting versus episode at some point, just to talk about those two films. But yeah, that is a good remake, Mark. I agree.
A goofy remake was The Haunting in the Hill House, the 1999 one.
Yeah, we talked about that.
That was good. Yeah, we've covered that in an episode. Goofy, but
goofy.
fun. I quite enjoyed it.
I did too.
Goofy. There was an excellent remake of a super skeevy film, I think from the early 80s or late 70s, called Maniac. Really skeevy film from the. Yeah. They remade it in a really weird way.
Oh, I've seen the original, but not the new one.
2012, I think it was, with I think it was Elijah Wood.
You know what? I did hear about that. Yeah,
it's an amazing film, and it's like I think 60 or 70% first-person perspective. A really lot of the film is first-person perspective, a ridiculous amount, and it works. They made it work.
I need to see this. In fact, I'm gonna put the remake down here on my my trusty list of things that I need to see.
Yeah,
it keeps growing.
I've got more.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Another remake of a George Romero film, The Crazies. I don't really like the George Romero original film. I haven't seen it in a long time. I thought it was okay. But the actual remake, I think it was 2010 with Timothy Olyphant, was really good. Really good.
We both have very similar taste there, Mark, because I agree. I think the remake is far better than the original film.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. There was a remake for I Spit on Your Grave. We were getting into grimmer territory here. A remake of I Spit on Your Grave that was kind of interesting. Nowhere near as grim as the original film, but kind of an interesting and well-made version of the story. Though I have to say, I Spit on Your Grave 2, which I've seen, the sequel to this remake, not the original film, was kind of interesting because it went full bore woman as avenging angel who was totally relentless. She almost became sort of Michael Myers driven. It was kind of an interesting but still quite distasteful. You know, rape revenge stories can be a bit grim, right?
I mean, yeah, the original film is kind of hard to watch. It's, I mean, and you know, it's like, you need to talk about these things, and horror should address things like this that are horrible. But man, that when you watch something like that, it's always it's doing what it's supposed to. It makes you not have a good feeling, right?
Yeah, indeed. There was a really good remake of The Hills Have Eyes in the 2010s.
Yeah. That's a great one.
I think it was 2008, but I could be wrong. That was a good film.
I think I prefer the remake to the original, and I like the original, The Hills Have Eyes.
Yeah, I like both. I like both.
Yeah,
I don't say one's better than the other. The original's kind of goofy, but it's got its moments, you know, baby, juicy, and all that.
But man, the remake is brutal. Both of the 1 and 2. The Hills Have Eyes. Those are
indeed.
They're great films, but they are brutal to watch.
Whereas the original sequel, Hills Have Eyes 2, the original sequel for the original film, is goofy as hell. There's memory sequences from a dog's perspective, things like that. It's mad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's the remake of Night of the Living Dead. In 1990, which we actually discussed briefly, didn't we? Before we started recording.
Just before we started.
Yeah. So
I think we're going to probably do an episode on Night of the Living Dead soon.
Yeah. And so we're getting into the less strong ones now. There was a remake of The Wolfman from the 40s, you know, with Lon Chaney.
That was 2000?
2010, I think.
Now, I like that film. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, I thought it was all right. I thought it was okay.
Okay, yeah.
I was okay with it. I didn't think it was terrible. I just thought it was okay, you know. That was my feeling on it.
It's not the original, but it's fun.
They've recently kind of redid Hellraiser.
Indeed,
in an interesting way. Have I seen it? I have seen it. Unfortunately, a lot of the characters are very unsympathetic, and I really only started to feel for them like in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, that was the Netflix.
But they picked it. They did pick it up. It was in the end, I felt happy I got to the end, because if I'd have stopped 20 minutes from the end, I would have thought that's a terrible, terrible film with terrible characters. But actually,
you made it through.
It worked. It worked. It made it work for me. There was a recent. I don't know if this is a remake, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing. I can't remember if it was a remake or not. It was okay, but I can't remember if it was a remake. So let's not talk about it anymore. They remade Fright Night, the original 80s Fright Night. They remade it with David Tennant actually, and Colin
I want to see that one. Yeah,
it was all right. The original's way better, but
I mean, I love the original Fright Night. It's up there on as one of my favorite films.
Yeah,
so.
and there was a remake of one of the films I absolutely despise. The original, I hate the original. It's Last House on the Left. I think it's a really unpleasant film.
That is
yeah. Not because of
like
what happens to the characters necessarily. It's the way it's treated in a jokey way afterwards. That
it's really
a bad taste.
Really, yeah, I agree with you. Bad taste is a good way to describe it. I remember just feeling really uncomfortable after watching that film. And there aren't too many films I watch where I just like maybe some French extreme films give me the same feeling. But I was like, oh, okay, this is not my cup of tea.
And but the remake I thought was decent. I actually respected what happened and treated it seriously. So I was way happy with that. That was my list. And that was just a few. And, there's other ones. There's TV versions of stuff. There's TV version of The Shining, things like that. But, you can go on and on and on. But I think horror remakes have a pretty good batting average for being decent.
I would agree with you.
Really good. And often they're improvements. You look at The Thing and The Fly if you want to see an improvement, right?
There are some really good remakes out there.
Yeah. So yes,
for all the bad ones, I would say we have an equal amount of good ones, which is, that's kind of rare in film. Usually when they,
I think there's more good than bad. I think it's more
I would agree. Yeah,
80-20 actually. To be honest,
I could see that.
Yeah,
which, we all complain about remakes of films a lot of the time, but because you do want new original things, but at the same time, when people really care and they want to get these films right, and then I'm like, yeah, by all means, go for the remake. Especially if they have something different to do, like in the Evil Dead remake. I thought that.
I didn't put that. I didn't put that on my list because it's not quite a remake. It's more like a new version of the same universe, right?
Exactly.
So I wasn't sure.
That's a good way to put it, really.
But it's very good.
So
it's very good. It's very good.
Yeah, I like
2013. I went to see that at cinema. Very pleased.
Nice.
They did something so good with that. Yeah. So
cool.
I mean that's touching tip of the iceberg. Someone could write a whole book about horror remakes. Honestly, there's enough material, and there's also different versions of the same story as well, which isn't quite the same thing. But it's terrific.
Film inspires film, which is great. I think the more we can get, the better. And, as long as it's quality, as I say.
It's interesting. Like I say, it's got a low. There's a lot of misses, but I feel zombie films is one of the genres where there's a massive interaction between video gaming development.
Yes.
The other one may be things like the Mad Max kind of genre. There's a lot of that. But how many zombie? Last of Us. Video game inspired a TV series, things like that.
The Last of Us, such a good game. I have not seen the TV series yet, but I will at some point.
I think there's a film of Dead Rising as well. Is
there?
I've never seen it. Yeah, I don't think it was ever theatrically released, but I think
it's funny because Dead Rising is just the game is almost treated comedic, like, hey, I can run around in this mall and do whatever I want.
Yeah, I can make things to kill zombies. I can strap a blade to a baseball bat and make a even more powerful baseball. All that kind of stuff. It's
exactly. I still like that game. But should we get on the feedback here?
Yeah, let's get on to feedback. We're getting short of time, so we'll get through
we are.
Feedback. So I posted on the group about a week ago. We're recording our next show soon. It's Dawn of the Dead. Did you like this one? Are fast zombies better than slow zombies? What's your favourite and most hated horror remake? Please talk to us. That was my desperate plea. And our first response was Bruce Hannon. Hi, Bruce. Bruce is a good guy. He's always paying attention. He always interacts. He's great. He's great.
Yeah, and we appreciate anyone who takes time to interact. I know not everybody uses Facebook now, right? But Facebook is still a great platform for groups, and that's why we still use it.
Yeah. So he says, hi guys, this comes at a good Sorry, I'll start again. Hi guys, this comes at a good time. I literally just finished Dead Island 2 a couple of days ago on Xbox Game Pass, and I posted my top 5 zombie movies, excluding George Romero's original, on my Instagram page on Friday, and I'm going to tell you what those are. Let me have a quick look. So his top 5 are Return of the Living Dead, Shaun of the Dead, Zombie Flesh Eaters, 28 Days Later, and Dawn of the Dead. So, yeah.
Very good films, all of them.
Yeah. So, as I stated on my page, I think the 2004 remake is just as good as the original movie. It's possibly one of the best remakes out there. We don't disagree?
Totally.
I put it underneath The Thing and the Fly, but I think it might be third, actually. Is that good?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Like many remakes, you could argue, was it necessary? However, I think the original may seem a bit dated now for some viewers, and the remake did a great job staying faithful to the original, but it certainly feels more polished to this. My feeling on remakes is, why not? Who cares? We got the original. I think, especially if they bring something new like this did, or if the story is intrinsically generational. I've already talked about that. Like, I see it as being perfectly valid to remake. I see Carrie. And there's other ones that I think are perfectly valid to remake. When they have elements that, you know, the basic dramatic tension has changed given, you know, we've moved on and, you know, and things like that.
Humans continue to evolve, so does film. I think that's one reason that's one reason I find film so interesting, is because older film is historical, you know, and we can go back. It's like a time capsule almost, and it's interesting.
And the horror films in particular reflect the phobias and concerns of an era, don't they? Or sometimes they reflect the opposite of that, right? So sometimes they're like, we don't want to think about this stuff. We want horror films not to be about that. Sometimes that happens too. But yeah. Anyway, getting back to Bruce. Yeah. As far as fast-paced or runners, there's an argument for both on what type of movie and even game you're going for. I personally prefer slow-paced slightly more, just like the original 3 Resident Evil games. Minus the creatures, I prefer limited ammo and a more isolated feel, and that kind of works better for me in movies.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Bruce. Especially with Resident Evil games, I do prefer the slow zombies, but I think maybe that's just because, you know, the first Resident Evil is sort of my big introduction to zombies. So
I play a game where they kind of got a nice balance, right? It's called Hunt Showdown, and you're in the old bayous of Wild West. So the guns are revolvers and very slow, clunky bolt action rifles and shotguns. So you got very limited ammo. But what they do is the zombies are slow until they see ya or hear ya. And then they run towards you, but not like run. They're just shuffling way faster towards you. So it's kind of a nice balance of dealing with slow and fast, in that once you're noticed, they become fast. But when you can run around them if you're quiet and they're not bothered. So it's kind of a nice balance, that game. Anyway.
That game sounds awesome.
Yeah, it is but very intense, because you're also playing other players. So you make a noise. If you shoot a zombie, that's a noise across the map that alerts all other players you're there, who may come and get you, right? So it's kind of a tense.
It sounds
fun.
Anyway. Sounds like a lot of fun.
It is well, it's tense. It is fun. And I'm rubbish at it, by the way, but I still really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm not good at video games, but I play them and love them. So
Yeah. Now, as far as remakes in general, I honestly don't mind them. I would like to think that encourage people to go back and watch the original movie if they've not seen it before. I thought Let Me In was not far off the original Let the Right One In. We differ there. I much prefer the original, but yeah, fair enough. The Grudge and the remakes are pretty solid. They're okay, yeah. 13 Ghosts and House of Wax. There you go, 2 I didn't even mention. 13 Ghosts and House of Wax are actually pretty fun. And he's in brackets, my head is hung in shame. Why? Who cares? It's fine. I feel the same about Haunting of Hill House. It's fine. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if you enjoy it, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. Evil Dead 2013 is another one of my favourites, and Halloween was this. He likes Halloween too, so you're not alone. You're not alone.
Yeah, I like that one.
Although these 2 movies are very unnecessary, in my opinion. I don't know. I think Evil Dead was fine, personally. As far as the worst, I would echo Nightmare on Elm Street and Pet Sematary are terrible. There you go.
Yeah,
there's
as you said, Mark.
Yeah.
He gets it, and I agree. I concur.
Yeah. Oh, and going back to Dead Island 2, it was really fun. As far as the gameplay, it reminded me of Borderlands mixed with The Last of Us. Borderlands, I always enjoy. But they're not zombies, by the way. They're psychos. It's not the same. Hope you're both both keeping well, and I did well not to mention the Crow trailer. Okay. Yes, the Crow remake's coming out, isn't he?
Oh man,
okay.
I can't believe they're doing that. Well, I can't believe they're doing that, and I hope it's good because the Crow is a film I cherish very much. So we'll see what happens.
I feel okay. I'm okay. I'm not in love with the Crow. I think it's all right. You know, I don't mind it, but I haven't seen it in a very, very long time. Anyway, next response, Kevin Matthews. Hi, Kevin. Another big feedback for us.
Indeed, good to talk to you, Kevin. Virtually.
Yeah. He says, I love the Dawn of the Dead remake and agree with the love for that opening sequence right through the credits accompanied by the superb Johnny Cash song. The original still edges ahead. I agree with that, but it's close, right?
Johnny Cash, he's my favorite rapper. That's what I always say. I don't think Johnny Cash can sing, but man, his voice is cool and his lyrics are cool and hold up even now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And he said the original still edges ahead, but the remake comes pretty damn close, especially when you think of how bad we all suspected it was going to be. I actually prefer Let Me In to Let the Right One In. In brackets, I think the leads do a slightly better job and it gets rid of the rubbish, bizarre cat attack sequence. I agree, the original one, cat attack is bad. But the worst horror remakes that spring to mind are both A Nightmare on Elm Street and The Fog. I've forgotten they'd remade The Fog, and I haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it either.
No.
I do remember hearing about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get some feedback from Bunny Eye. Hey, Bunny. I love the remake and all the tasty extras that come on DVD. Interested.
Yeah, me too.
I had it on DVD. I've probably got it somewhere, but I couldn't find it, so I had to watch it streaming from my network, from my sort of, my Skybox kind of thing.
Yeah, remakes and DVDs are getting more and more rare. I mean, DVDs themselves are becoming more and more rare. Blu-rays. I was talking about this.
No. Well, they are, but I'm not giving mine up. That's for sure.
Oh, I'm not either. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying physical media. I think it's good to support it, and I wish companies would kind of treat it like they used to. If you get someone like Shout Factory, they know what they're doing. Or is it Arrow in the UK, Mark?
Yeah, Arrow. Yeah.
They do great releases. Several people are still doing good physical media
and Severin and things like that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I could go on a tirade, I guess, about physical media and why it's far better than digital, but I will not. I'll spare our audience that.
Okay. Then we get some feedback from Lucas Dickinson. Hi, Lucas. I like the Dawn of the Dead remake quite a lot. The first 10 minutes are easily a top contender for the best opening in horror history. It's awesomely intense.
Yes.
When it's fast versus slow zombies, that all depends on how each is handled. That is a very good point. I agree. But I lean more towards slow zombies because it's that slow creeping dread that is going to get you eventually because it won't ever stop. A great example of that outside of Romero's universe is It Stains the Sands Red. That's the first time I've ever heard of this movie. That's interesting. It Stains the Sands Red. The movie never has to stop to sleep or rest, but the victim does. It will get you. For horror remakes, I love Halloween. Oh, here we go. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Savini's Night of the Living Dead, and the Soska Sisters Rabid. Another one I forgot and I haven't seen. The Soska Sisters do interesting films. I really like American Mary, or whatever it was called. Yeah, I think it was called American Mary. It was interesting.
That is a really good one. Yeah.
I utterly despise A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th remakes with every fibre of my being. I totally forgot about the Friday the 13th ones.
Yeah,
they weren't very good. Yeah,
I don't hate the Friday the 13th remake, but it's not good.
It feels like it's leaning too much into Texas Chainsaw Massacre territory.
Yes, that is the big problem with it. Yeah. I agree. And A Nightmare on Elm Street, as we've already said, just terrible. Yeah, there's nothing you can do for that.
It's a shame because the casting was good. I think it's just a bad film. It just made badly.
Exactly.
Next bit of feedback's from John Sauder. Hi, John. By the way, I really like the Let the Right One In comments. I think both films have their fair share of strengths and weaknesses. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's a great book too,
I like
by
both.
the way. Great book too. And then that was John, and as John went on to say some more. I love all the comments so far. Like what you like. I personally enjoy most everything James Gunn has been involved with. For me, though, I don't need a big budget popcorn version of Dawn with high-end glossy production values. Besides, I'm not acting like an old curmudgeon.
I like that
There are
word.
certain movies with that kind of grindhouse feel to them that I'll also always associate with the super intense horror experience I had growing up. And you can't duplicate that by pumping a lot of money into the reels. I'll just break off there, John. I just want to make a point. I agree. You can't recapture that feeling, but you can do something damn close and different and interesting. And I specifically talking about Maniac now. Go watch the remake of Maniac. It's grungy as hell, but in a completely different way from the 70s film. Interesting.
I've seen the 70s one on The Last Drive-In, so I'm interested to see the remake since we've been talking about that.
And then he goes on to say, plus, I don't find the story particularly engaging. I thought it was hellish engaging myself. Okay. Good performances. Loved hearing Johnny Cash. I laughed at the Richard Cheese celebrity lookalike. Cheeses and celebrity lookalike. So, yeah, celebrity lookalike was fun.
Yeah, that was great.
And then you go on to thank everyone for their feedback. So we got some great feedback there. So, yeah.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, everybody. And thank you again. Just want to thank everyone on air who comments, supports the show, and listens. Gosh, I can't believe we've been going for 8-9 years, Mark, doing this show.
Is it really? Is it that long? Wow.
It's been a long time. And so we really, I know a lot of people are too busy to comment, but we do really appreciate it. Whether you use Facebook or, on our YouTube channel, both are great places to leave your feedback. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so it was really interesting, all those diverse opinions. It's always interesting to have different opinions because it makes you think, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to give it another go. And I encourage that, going back and checking. Horror is an interesting genre. And, we've had solid horror films now for over 100 years. You look at Vampire and Nosferatu. It's delivered, right? It's delivered. There were times when it went downhill a bit. The 40s was a little weak. The 90s was a little weak. But it just keeps coming back. It just will not stay down, will it, horror? That's the great thing about it.
Yeah, the genre is very resilient, I would say. Like, it's outlived the, action hero movies and, many other genres, I think. We still get films there, but... Yeah, I don't think anything is going as strong as horror.
Horror, sometimes it goes weak, but it comes back with a blast. And I think that horror and science fiction are real strong reflectors of society when they were made, as well as the other things that were just being entertaining. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, let's take it home, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. We've been talking for a while here. Again, just want to thank everybody. Check out our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/groups/UN of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube it's a video version of the audio, so it's slightly different. I have to be careful due to copyright restrictions. Otherwise, I'd probably put more clips in than I do. So the audio, as I've said, always drops first. And you can get that on unhpodcast.com or any podcasting player or network you listen to. We're pretty much on everything at this point. So so thanks to you, Mark. I appreciate it, man. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like when we talk zombies, we always have very interesting conversations, because our last conversation with you, me, and Becky about zombies was also very long and interesting. So zombies, they strike a chord with us, don't they?
They do, and we're in a lot of fun talking about sort of Cockneys versus zombies, for example. So and they're kind of fun to visit now and again, though we pick the best, right? But there's still great zombie films. We talked about the TV series Kingdom recently, for example, or The Train to Busan. Yeah. There's always something interesting coming out. And video games too. Honestly, I think there are more zombie games than any other type of game in video games now. It's
I think you may be right.
Common.
Yeah,
it's so common. It so lends itself to interactivity and fun because they're worthy things to kill. You guilt-free almost, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't feel bad about it either. It's like, okay, this, like, they're going to attack me, so got to defend myself. So it's fascinating. And I mean, just a wealth. I mean, there are thousands of zombie movies at this point. It's crazy. But we won't even go down that path. But again, Mark, thank you, man. This has been awesome. I always enjoy it. And I think we're going to maybe do a few more zombies next show. We'll I won't set it in stone, but I will say it's coming in the future. So so please stay tuned. I have been Jason.
And I've been Mark.
And we'll see you next time right here on the United Nations of Horror.
The United Nations of Horror is a podcast about all things horror. From thrillers of yesteryear to today's modern horror, we are here to present fun and intelligent conversation about the genre films we love. Join us and please help spread the word about the United Nations of Horror podcast and videocast to horror fans across the globe. Find the podcast on all fine podcasting services. Join us on Facebook by simply going to facebook.com and entering in United Nations of Horror. You can also find us on YouTube by going to youtube.com and searching for United Nations of Horror podcast.